Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to another episode on your favorite Little Slaw YouTube channel. So today in this video, we're going to see about, this is again the first episode of Azure Pipelines, and I'm excited to take you on this journey into the world of DevOps and continuous integration. So no matter what, if you're a DevOps engineer or a developer or a tester, performance tester, automation tester, everyone must have some knowledge on Azure Pipelines. So today we're going to explore the Microsoft Azure pipelines, which is part of the Azure DevOps. And in fact, we're going to have a look at end to end. In fact, this is the very first step of it, which is a very powerful cloud service that can transform how you build, test, and deploy your applications. So no matter what, you're working on a .NET, Java, Python, JavaScript, or any other languages, Azure Pipelines gets you covered. So by the end of this episode, what you will gain is you will understand what Azure Pipeline is, why it is a game changer for development teams, and how it can solve many of the build and deployment challenges you might be facing today. So let's dive in, and here is the second slide. So which we are going to see about what is Azure Pipeline. Yeah, so that's the question again. What is exactly is Azure Pipeline is? So Microsoft Azure Pipeline is a cloud service. It's not an uh, application kind of thing. It's a kind of a cloud service which you can use to automatically build, test, and deploy your code project. So think of it as a someone like your personal DevOps assistant who works 24/7 in the cloud. So now let me break down um, this into four characteristics that makes Azure Pipeline more special. So first thing is the cloud-based. So when I say cloud-based, you don't need to worry about maintaining these servers or infrastructure because Microsoft handles all of that for you. Secondly, automated. So when I say automated, once you set it up, it can automatically build, test, and deploy your code whenever changes are made. And then, sorry, the third one is collaborative. Yes, so your entire team can access and benefit from the same pipeline, which ensure everyone is on the same page. And then the fourth one, which is universal. Yes, it works with virtually any programming language or any project type you can think of. So whether you are building a web application or mobile app or even a desktop software, Azure Pipeline can handle it, and that's the advantage of using it. So just to give you a quick summary, it's cloud based, it is automated, it supports automation, it's collaborative, and it is universal. Which means it works with any language or project type. And now talking about the problem we are solving. So what problem are we going to solve using the Azure pipeline? So now before we get too excited about the solution, so let's talk about the problems that Azure pipeline solves. So if you have worked in software development for a length of time, you have probably experienced some of these challenges. So firstly, there is the nightmare of build server maintenance, right? So someone on your team has to keep those servers updated, patched, and running. So when they break, and they will break, your entire development process grinds to a halt. Everything goes to a halting position, right? So that's the first nightmare for any server maintenance team. Then these are those complex scripts written by different people over the years. So you know the ones I'm talking about, the scripts that somehow work, but nobody really understands how it works, right? So when the person who wrote them leaves the team, you are left with a mystery. And let's talk about the communication breakdown. So how many times have testers been left wondering when a build is ready, right? Someone was supposed to update that spreadsheet, but they forgot again. So don't even get me started on security patches that lag behind for months because nobody wants to risk break the building server. So if you find all of these sound familiar, well, Azure Pipeline addresses every single one of these pain points, and that's exactly what we're going to explore today. So the solution for all of these problems is the build server maintenance and updates, solving complex undocumented scripts by different people, manual notification processes, and the testers don't know when the builds are ready, and the security patches and updates lag behind, and the limited scalability for new language and problems. So all these are solved by Azure pipelines because these Azure pipelines addresses all these pain points. So now we'll talk about the key benefits. So talking about the key benefits, Azure Pipelines is such a game changer because the benefits falls into two main categories. One is the infrastructure benefits and the other one is the process benefits. So talking about the infrastructure side, you get Microsoft hosted and maintained servers. This means Microsoft takes care of all the heavy lifting updates, patches, security maintenance, every single thing. So every time you run a pipeline, you get a fresh virtual machine. It's like having a brand new computer for every build. So no more worry about leftover files from previous build causing mysterious issues. On the other side, Azure Pipelines provides a standardized task catalog. Instead of those mysterious scripts we talked about earlier in the previous slide, you get a well-documented, tested tasks that you can combine to create your build process. And automatic notification means your tester will always know when a build is ready, so no more forgotten spreadsheet updates. And then the multi-language support means you can expand into a new technology without having to completely retool your build infrastructure. And as your team grows, Azure Pipeline scales with you effortlessly. So all these benefits, they translate into one single thing, that is more time for your team to focus on what you do best, that is writing great code and delivering value to your customers. And that's why you choose Azure Pipeline. So just to give you a quick summary, the infrastructure benefits where Microsoft give you their hosted and maintained servers, which are always updated with latest patches, and there is no more server maintenance for you. And every time you get a fresh virtual machine for each run. And when it comes to process benefits, you get to have a standardized task catalog, and they are automatically notified to you, and it supports multi languages, and they are easily scalable. And moving on to the continuous integration pipelines, the CI/CD pipeline overview. So now let's dive in to the heart of what we are building, a continuous integration pipeline, or CI pipeline for short. So continuous integration is the process of automating the building and testing of code every time a team member commits changes to version control. So that is like having a quality gate that every piece of code must pass through before it becomes part of your application. So let me walk you through the flow. So it starts first with a code. When a developer commits changes to your repository, this triggers the build. So the next step is the build step. So where your code is compiled and prepared, and next comes the test, where the automated tests verify that everything works as expected, and then comes the verify. So when we verify that all quality checks are passed, and finally we produce a build artifact, the finished product that's ready for deployment. So now overall a pipeline is what we get. So a pipeline is essentially a script that defines how your build, test and deployment steps are run. It's made up of individual steps called tasks. So think of tasks like a Lego block. So we all know we have Lego blocks in our home where we play. So it's like a Lego block where each one does a specific job and you combine them to build exactly the process you need. So the beauty of this approach is consistency and reliability, because every build goes through exactly the same process every single time. There's no change in between it. And then the pipeline components. So let's break down the key component that makes up the Azure pipeline. So firstly, you need to have the source repository. So this is where your code lives. It could be your GitHub or Bitbucket or Subversion or any other version control system. So when changes are made to this repository, your pipeline springs into the action. And next is the build agent. So this is the workhorse that actually runs your build and deployment job. And think of it as a dedicated computer that exists solely to build your code. So the great thing about Azure pipeline is that you get a fresh virtual machine for each pipeline run, so there's no contamination between builds. And next comes the task. So tasks are the individual operations within your pipeline, and these are package scripts with well-defined inputs and outputs. Microsoft provides a huge catalog of pre-built tasks, and you can also create your own own custom tasks when needed. And finally, the build artifacts at the end result of your pipeline. So these could be compiled applications packaged into zip files and Docker images, JavaScript libraries, or any other deployment unit. And the artifacts are what we get is handed off to your testing or deployment process. So each of these components work together seamlessly to create a robust automated build process. And now talking about the next step, that is understanding the build agents. So now let's take a deeper look at build agents because understanding them is crucial to making the right choice for your project. So we do have two types of agents. One is the Microsoft hosted agents, and then we do have the self-hosted agents. So basically, what is a build agent? So a build agent is installable software that runs one build or deployment job at a time. It won't run two at a time. It will run one at a time. It can be either a build or a deployment job. So as your team on code base grow, you will likely need multiple agents to handle the workload. So firstly, we have Microsoft hosted agents, and these are managed by Microsoft. And this means you get to have automatic maintenance, upgrades, and patches. You never have to worry about keeping them current. You get a fresh virtual machine for each job, and this eliminates any possibility of builds interfering with each other. And Microsoft provides multiple operating systems, including Ubuntu 22.4, Windows, Mac OS, whatever you want, you can get it from Microsoft. So the main requirement is that your organization needs at least one parallel job allocation. But don't worry, Microsoft offers free grants for new organization. And next comes the self-hosted agents. So as the name implies, yeah, these agents that you manage yourself. So you install them on your own infrastructure and register them with Azure DevOps. This gives you complete control over the environment. So you can install exactly the tools and configurations you need. And this is particularly useful when you have specific security requirements or need access to on-premises resources. So for most teams getting started, Microsoft hosted agents are the way to go because they are simpler, require no maintenance, and scale automatically with your needs. And ready to get started? Yes, all right. You're probably excited to get started with Azure Pipelines. So let me tell you what you need to begin with your journey. So if you are planning to use Microsoft hosted agents, which I recommend for most scenarios, so you will need an Azure DevOps organization and at least one Microsoft hosted parallel job allocation. And here is the good news. If you are working with a new Azure DevOps organization, you can request a free grant of parallel jobs. So the approval process typically takes like 2 or 3 business days. So it's not a long wait to get started. And once you have your parallel job allocation, you're ready to create your first pipeline. And that's exactly what we're going to cover in our next episode. So in the next episode, we'll walk through the entire process of setting up your first Azure pipeline for a web application, and we'll configure it to automatically notify team members when builds are complete, solving the spreadsheet problem we talked about earlier. And you will see firsthand how easy it is to go from manual error-prone processes to a smooth automated workflow. And by the end of the next episode, you will be having a working pipeline that you can show off to your team and start building upon. So a quick summary, automation, yes, is the name of the game. Azure Pipelines eliminates those manual build processes that are prone to human error and consume valuable time. Your builds happen consistently, reliably, and without someone having to remember to kick them off. And next comes the cloud first, which means you can focus on what matters most to your code and your customers. No more weekends spent fixing build server for building the server or scrambling to apply security patches. And next comes the smart notifications, where it keeps your entire team in the loop automatically. Testers know exactly when builds are ready, developers get immediate feedback when something breaks, and project managers have visibility into the development process. And perhaps most importantly, Azure pipelines are scalable. So whether you're a small startup or large enterprise, whether you're working with one programming language or 10, Azure pipelines grows and adapts with your needs. So again, the bottom line is Azure pipelines equals better DevOps, and better DevOps equals happier, more productive teams. And that's a wrap up of our first episode. So I hope you are as excited as than me about Azure Pipelines as I am. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode where we will build our first pipeline together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care and bye bye.